The Jewish Sound, Soul Sport, with your host Ilan Herman, only on 20 High.
Good afternoon. This is Ilan Herman, and it is a great privilege to be on 20 High. Isaacrez, thank you as the host of this wonderful show. Indeed, I have had a number of years in which I've been involved in the Soul Sport magazine. It is, to my knowledge, the world's only circulating official Jewish sports magazine. And I've got a number of wonderful things to speak with you about it with regard to the magazine. Immediately comes to mind as I interviewed Jody Scheckter, who is the only Formula One Jewish world champion, a South African. And Jody Scheckter, when I asked him, based in London, in my telephonic interview, I said, Jody, tell me about your early years in East London. And he went on to describe how there was the focus of the Kyalami, so to speak, the racing track in East London, and how he got involved in racing. I asked him if he remembered his Cheder teacher's name, but after all those laps that he'd taken, it had left his mind. But that conversation with Jody Scheckter, who featured in one of our magazines, just to give you an example, is one of a great many world champions, Jewish, illustrious, phenomenal athletes that we've covered in the magazine. And I'll just name a few people like Sean Thompson, who was surfing champion of the world in, I believe it was 1978. We've interviewed phenomenal athletes like Ali Bacha, people like Mandy Yachad, and we cross over not only on the immediate side of sport, but anything that has anything to do with sport, even if it pertains to things such as cultural events or show business. And it brings to mind the interview which I did with that wonderful lady, the sister of the famous movie producer Steven Spielberg. And Mrs. Spielberg was somebody that really stood out. She was a front cover lead story, and she spoke about her wonderful movie which she produced, a documentary of the basketball winning team for Israel, which won that incredible, really miraculous victory against the Russians when Maccabi Tel Aviv, I believe it was, beat them, and it became a national celebratory event. It was during the time, as I recall, in the late 70s, not long after the event which transpired at the Munich Olympics, that tragedy. And she explains over there, Mrs. Spielberg, how basically what they called the miracle on wood, because wood being the basketball court, was literally a miracle, and in the sense that here you had athletes which had no hope whatsoever. And she explained how in her interviews with those winning basketball players who defeated the world champions at the time, who were the Russians, it became, as I say, a national celebration in Israel. Soul Sport magazine started about 5 years ago in South Africa, and we weren't sure if it was going to be well received or not. It was almost like something where we just attempted to see if there was any sort of interest in it. Remarkably so, it came to my attention that it was something which was not only well received and liked, but people were thronging to try and get a copy and to and lapped up the stories of Jewish sport. We then continued it, and as the joke goes, if you want a what's one of the shortest books ever written, it's the book of Jewish sports, meaning to say that people have a perception that Jewish sports is not something which is much to write about, that there haven't been that much in the way of Jewish sports and sports people. But in fact, that's not true. World champions in many, many spheres, and we've covered them. People like, of course, the great swimmer who won I think it was 5 Olympic golds, Mark Spitz. And we speak about more recently in the tabloids or in the news about Ali Raisman, who is a double gold medalist at the Olympic Games, who unfortunately had this disclosure recently of events surrounding how she was taken advantage of, abused as a young gymnast by the American trainer in the Olympics. But we've got so many Jewish world champions, and not just champions individually, but collective teams which have stood out in sporting history. If you recall, Chariots of Fire, that remarkable individual who ran at a time in which he was Jewish and it wasn't that popular to be so, and he recently passed away, but he was also well-known, renowned as a sportsman throughout the world, and so many Jews have been. Now, we know as the years have gone by, for example, wonderful events such as the Maccabi Games have emerged, which have taken sport to another level for collective Jewish connection and collective Jewish gatherings. I myself had the privilege of attending 2 Maccabi Games, where I represented South Africa, fortunately for football, for soccer, and we had, I can truly say it was one of the most memorable experiences of my life. The reason is because here you are gathered with Jews from across the world, and so many of them haven't had the opportunity to go to Israel, and this sport event brings them together, and it is a time in which you sense the unity of Jews, no matter what their religious backgrounds, their affiliations, and that sort of thing. The Maccabi Games is probably the single most prominent Jewish event on the calendar in terms of sport. So getting a little bit more diversifying in terms of the sport, certainly as a South African, we're probably most proud about our incredible, what they call the rugby minion. 10 Springboks, 10 Jewish South African rugby representatives for our country, which have over the course of time worn what's called the yellow and gold, the green and gold, the green and gold shirts of the Springboks proudly. And some names that come to mind, of course, the wonderful man, a mensch, and may he continue, Sid Nomus, who represented South Africa so beautifully on the fields of rugby. Joel Stransky, who dropped that incredible drop goal against the All Blacks that won us the World Cup, I think it was in 1995. Oki Geffen, Wilf Rosenberg, and those wonderful Springbok minion players, which make us so proud. And then, of course, there's the soccer side, and we're also incredibly proud in South Africa to have had and still have Dean Furman, the incredible Dean Furman, who is in fact the captain of the South African soccer side and has led the side out for many, many matches. And Dean Furman, of course, originally from Cape Town and traditionally Jewish, and he continues to represent the country and play locally on the soccer scene here, having come from England, where he played club soccer and was brought back to South Africa to play with SuperSport United. And then, some people have asked why it is that I got involved in sport. And it's not difficult for those that know me as to why I took such an interest in sport and so passionate about it, because those that know me and know my family will know of my late father, George Santoro Herman. He was the first Brazilian to be brought to South Africa from what was then the second highest rated soccer team in the world, which was called Botafogo in Brazil. My late father used to play alongside people such as Garrincha, Vavá, Didi, Amarildo, Nilton Santos, Zagallo. Those great players were part of the Brazilian World Cup winning team of 1962. And there was a coach here in South Africa called Mario Twani, who at the time was coaching Hellenic in Cape Town. And he went scouting for soccer players in the Latin countries. He went to Brazil and other countries, Argentina, and he came across this 20-year-old George Santoro. And he made an offer to Botafogo, to the club, and he brought my father, when I was, at that point, wasn't even thought of, conceived in any manner or form. And this was in the 1965. And he came to South Africa, and from Hellenic, my father was then transferred to Highlands Park a year later, and became a well-known figure in the local soccer scene here in South Africa. And there sort of became my passion when I started growing up and playing soccer, and perhaps some of the genes of my father maybe extended themselves, where I too took on the game at quite a demanding and sort of competitive level. As I mentioned, went to Maccabi a few times and developed a love for the game. But it wasn't just soccer, sports in general. As one that often watches one sport, you tend to enjoy watching others and the nature of the competitive game. So it's been an incredible interest of mine, and that developed into the Soul Sport magazine, which at this point in time is in South Africa in hardback and print. We've produced 9 editions thus far. It's also available online on the internet. We've got a website which is soulsportsa.com. We're coming to our next edition, which is the 10th edition of Soul Sport, and I'll just give you an insight as to, again, the phenomenal articles and stories that we're bringing. You may know recently there's been talk of what was the launch at Chelsea Football Club of a campaign which was trying to educate the Premier League, the culture in England, and to try and extend the message beyond that frontier as well. What is the message? What is the theme? What is the actual project? It is no to anti-Semitism. The idea that a person looks at another individual and sees them as an equal, as a human, and senses the connection and the sameness and not the difference and not the division. And that is very much an element of sport. As we know, sport is about coming together no matter who you are. As long as you play the game, you can be different colors, different religions, different cultures. It's all about a unifying factor. So Chelsea Football Club launched the No to Anti-Semitism campaign, and renowned figures were there at the game. Of course, the owner of Chelsea Football Club himself, Roman Abramovich, was the man behind the whole project, and he initiated it. With sort of driven by what's called the Chelsea Foundation, and other well-known figures such as Ronald Lauder, who is the president of the World Jewish Congress, was present in London for that launch, as was Rabbi Mervis, who is the chief rabbi of Britain. He was also present, and so in our next edition, we are in fact having a special interview done where we'll be covering the No to Anti-Semitism. We're speaking to the Chelsea Foundation, and we'll be learning about how sports can influence culture, sports can influence people that are perhaps have a perspective of a slant in certain directions which are negative, and how we can find the unifying factor amongst people.
the Jewish sound. Just to remind you, there is Around and About with your host Isaac Resnick, Voice of the Cantor as well, and of course Ep1 with Justin Joffe, 20 High.
Other stories that we'll hope to cover in the coming magazine is there's actually a lot of interest on the feminine side, unusually so. I've come across many ladies who have said that they don't usually read sports magazines, but because of the nature of Soul Sport and the interesting articles and how they are more than just about sport, they also identify with human experiences and growth and inspiration. So we've decided to cater a lot more to the woman's perspective. So there's a lot of articles pertaining to women and sport, women and life, motivation, inspiration, how to stay driven and enthusiastic, because those things also all relate to health. Our magazine is about sport, health, life, and how to really keep yourself above water, ambitious, driven, and we hope we're catering and finding the right sort of ingredients that people are appreciating and enjoying. We hope to continue that magazine not only here in South Africa, but to extend it to the broader Jewish world, and we look forward to development and growth in that as well. That leads me to another area which I thought perhaps might be of interest for our listeners, and that is that during the years gone by, I myself got involved in Jewish community in the local synagogue here in South Africa, the Lions Dawn Fatin Shul, where I presided as the spiritual leader for a number of years, 18 years to be precise, and that led me into social activism. And what I created with relation to both sport and the idea of tikkun olam, which is the Jewish principle of reaching out to the world, was a non-profit organization which puts on various events and various sort of fundraisers. And I recall that 2 years ago we did a concert which raised funds for victims of terror in Israel for the One Family Group. And then this last year we did a concert which raised funds for the Lone Soldiers organization, the Lone Soldiers of Israel. And I extended that beyond the Jewish community and decided to use the mechanism of sport, and came up with a concept called the Grand Sports Raffle. The Grand Sports Raffle is basically an annual raffle which enables the winner to go to one of the grandest sporting events on the calendar. And last year, the raffle took 2 winners. The first set of winners went to Chelsea Football Club. We mentioned Chelsea earlier in the show, but Chelsea Football Club had a VIP available prize for us, where we went, took the winner and their partner across to London to watch Chelsea versus Arsenal. And then the second winner was to the Tennis Australian quarterfinals in Melbourne. And what we did was we took the funds that were raised from the raffle and we went to various schools. And I'll cite the school which we helped the most, was a school called Chiraletsi in Soweto. And they had a severe problem in terms of their sanitation and toilets and running water and sewage. And what we did was we took the raffle funds and we went and we did a proper development, cleanup, and installation of what was needed. This year, our second year of the Grand Sports Raffle, we've extended the whole project and the initiative. And again, we're driving at this wonderful outreach project. This year, we're including Chayenu, which is cancer kids from Israel that have a hospitality trip to South Africa. CHOC, which is Children for Cancers organization in South Africa. Africa Tikkun, which assists with education. And Feed South Africa, which assists those with hunger and those that suffer from starvation. And this time around, we've tied in with the FIFA World Cup in Russia. And what we've done is that we've developed a package with a full week of going to Russia to watch 2 games, in Moscow. And for those that enjoy culture and museums and shows, which better place to go to than many of our historic roots, which is Russia. And certainly from a Jewish perspective, there's so much in terms of history there that one can go and research. But as far as the soccer is concerned, what I've tried to do is I've tried to merge together the interests in sport, the interests in Judaism and activism and Tikkun Olam. And really, it's been a privilege and a pleasure for me as a person to get such fulfillment and gratification from being involved in hopefully changing people's lives. And I look forward to it both in terms of the magazine and in terms of our outreach towards the broader South African communities. And we look forward, please God, to blessings and success for all of us in the future. So really, just to bring it all together, for those that would like to at any point reach out to us, we're based here in Glen Hazel in Johannesburg, the offices for Soul Sport Magazine. We do have backdated copies there. The magazines are available online on www.soulsportsa.com. They're also available for purchase at places such as Kosher World. And you can always reach us at the office should you need further information about that. And with regard to the raffle is called the Grand Sports Raffle, and the website for that is www.grandsportsraffle.com. And again, our office details 011-440-1178. It's under the umbrella group called Soul Workout, and it's been and of course, they've got the email which you can reach us on, which is soulworkout@gmail.com. Soulworkout@gmail.com. I just want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening to 20 Chai, to my show, and I look forward to sharing further with you in future sessions, and wishing everybody blessing and success.